News from Jamaica. The focus of the 6th biennial Jamaica Diaspora Conference on Day 3 was centered on partnerships with the diaspora. At the inaugural symposium on immigration and deportation, Minister Bunting, who opened the session, paid special attention to the strategies being employed by his National Security Ministry to combat crime. The minister noted that foremost in his policy is a change from hard policing, such as curfews, legislation and paramilitary operations. Candice Ming has more in this report.
The minister notes that while these are important, there is a greater need for soft policing and other strategic methods. Part of that reasoning is the need to curtail the trend of children being involved in crime. The minister notes that between 250 and 300 gangs have children members as young as 12 years old. Minister Bunting blamed the epidemic, as he described it, on institutions such as the family and schools, the latter of which the minister notes that his ministry is taking a proactive approach to remedy.
800 kids who were registered to take GSAT just never showed up. And one of the things that we're doing differently is that we're actually now seeking out those 800 kids and going after every one of them to find out what happened and not allow them to just drop out of the system.
Minister Bunting notes that his ministry continues to champion a new approach to policing, which involves tackling crime in the same way a health system would treat a contagious disease.
We've also started to take what's called a public health approach to violence. We're treating violence as an epidemic. And the epidemiologists will tell you that the greatest predictor of a case of violence is a previous case of violence. So as I go on, I'll show you some of the ways we're restructuring our approach to respond in this sort of public health way rather than from a sort of military or paramilitary way to the challenges. We've come to accept that the police by themselves cannot solve our crime problems because a lot of what they do is dealing with a flame, and as long as the fire is being fueled by some of those causal factors, then we'll continue to have them. And at the end of the day, in order to combat any epidemic in the long term, what you have to do is change the group norms. So that's why we came up with the idea of the Unite for Change program.
He adds that the initiative is being undertaken in collaboration with several private and government stakeholders, including other ministries such as the Ministries of Education and Youth and Culture.
The objectives of this Unite for Change program is sustained reductions in crime, but also the fear of violent crime. To get people engaged in the co-production of their own safety and security, and to tackle head-on the dysfunctional elements of our culture and reorient people away from a culture of lawlessness.
As for controlling what the minister describes as the endemic of crime, key to that process is the Peace Management Initiative, which is a program through which reformed gang members are trained as peacekeepers and mediators in order to prevent reprisal incidences and an escalation in crime.
Part of this increased attention to the rights of citizens is that we stop arresting people for minor offenses. Half of the arrests by the JCF every year has been for possession of small quantities of ganja. And we end up criminalizing in the order of 15,000 young persons, largely male, every year, giving them a criminal record and stymieing their life chances.
He also shared some results of the Unite for Change initiative for the previous year, adding that he is not daunted by media headlines which often go against actual results from the initiatives being employed.
All major categories of crime, serious and violent crime, down 16%. And overall, it continues this year. We've had a bit of a challenge with inter-gang conflicts in the first few months of this year, we've given back some of the gains we made in reducing murders, but every other category, it continues a double-digit downward trend. And one of the quotes that I came across in closing is that when you're in a job like mine, where the headlines are often very discouraging and demoralizing. You know, Bill Clinton said it's very important to be able to distinguish between the headlines and the trend lines. If the trend lines are bad, all the happy headlines in the world won't make things come out well. But if the trend lines are not as bad as the headlines, you should wake up every morning full of optimism and be content with the trend lines until the headlines catch up. Fortunately for us, the trend lines are very positive.
From Montego Bay, Jamaica, I'm Candice Ming for CM Caribbean News.